Apparently, Michael Jackson suffered cardiac arrest this afternoon.
On June 25, 2009, the world stopped. News stations interrupted their broadcasts. Millions of fans rushed to televisions, radios, and websites searching for answers. The king of pop was dead. Official reports would later conclude that Michael Jackson died from acute Propofol intoxication, administered by his personal physician, Dr. Conrad Murray. The death was ruled a homicide. A trial followed. A conviction was secured. And for many people, that should have been the end of the story. But more than a decade later, questions still refuse to disappear. Because while the official cause of death is well documented, some researchers, fans, and former associates believe there may have been something deeper happening behind the scenes. A theory that suggests Michael Jackson wasn't simply killed by one fatal dose on one tragic day. Instead, they argue he may have been slowly breaking down for months, or even years, before his death. This idea became known as the poison theory. Not necessarily poison in the traditional sense, not a secret toxin slipped into a drink, not a Hollywood-style murder plot, but rather the possibility that a combination of medications, stress, sleep deprivation, physical decline, and extreme pressure gradually weakened him until his body could no longer survive. It's a theory surrounded by controversy. Some believe it deserves serious consideration. Others dismiss it entirely. But regardless of where the truth lies, the questions surrounding Michael Jackson's final months remain among the most debated mysteries in modern entertainment history. To understand why this theory exists at all, we first need to examine the final chapter of Michael Jackson's life. And that chapter begins with a comeback, one that the world was desperate to see, but one that Michael Jackson would never live to complete. Hongriola's. By early 2009, Michael Jackson was preparing for what many believed would be the greatest comeback in music history. This is it. Originally announced as 10 concerts in London, demand exploded immediately. Tickets sold out at astonishing speed. The number of planned shows eventually grew to 50. 50 performances. For an artist who had not completed a major tour in years, the excitement was enormous. But behind the scenes, things may not have been as perfect as they appeared. According to various reports from people involved in the production, rehearsals were intense. The expectations were enormous. The financial stakes were massive. Every detail had to be perfect. Michael Jackson was known for perfectionism throughout his career. Every movement, every note, every visual effect, everything had to meet his standards. But by 2009, he was no longer the young performer who stunned audiences during the Thriller era. He was 50 years old, and some people close to the production reportedly became concerned about his health. There were claims that he appeared exhausted, claims that he struggled with sleep, claims that he looked physically fragile. Some observers dismissed these concerns. Others viewed them as warning signs. At the time, nobody imagined they would soon become part of a much larger mystery. Hongriola's. One of the most important elements of the poison theory centers around sleep, or more specifically, Michael Jackson's inability to sleep. According to testimony later revealed during investigations, Jackson had reportedly suffered from severe insomnia for years. Sleep became increasingly difficult. Traditional methods weren't working. Doctors were consulted, medications were prescribed, different treatments were attempted, yet the problem continued. For most people, insomnia is frustrating. For a performer preparing for 50 massive concerts, it can become devastating. Sleep deprivation affects nearly every system in the body: memory, judgment, reaction time, mood, immune function, heart health, physical recovery. Everything begins to suffer. Supporters of the poison theory argue that chronic sleep deprivation may have been one of the biggest contributors to Michael Jackson's decline, not because it directly killed him, but because it weakened his body and increased dependence on stronger medical interventions. Over time, the search for sleep reportedly became one of the defining struggles of his final years, and that search would eventually lead him toward a drug that was never intended to be used as a sleep aid. Propofol. Hanvrimlers. Propofol is not an ordinary sleeping medication. It is a powerful anesthetic, the kind of drug typically used in hospitals during surgery. Under normal circumstances, it is administered by trained medical professionals in carefully controlled environments. Monitoring equipment is usually present. Emergency procedures are available. Patients are closely observed. According to investigators, Michael Jackson was receiving Propofol in a private home. This revelation shocked medical experts around the world. Many questioned how such a powerful substance could be used in that setting. Others wondered how long the practice had been occurring. And this is where the poison theory begins to expand. Some researchers believe the final dose was merely the last event in a much longer chain of dangerous medical decisions. Instead of viewing June 25 as an isolated incident, they view it as the culmination of months or years of escalating dependency on pharmaceutical solutions, a body under constant strain, a sleep problem becoming increasingly severe, and increasingly powerful medications being used to manage it. Whether that interpretation is correct remains heavily debated, but it is one reason why the theory continues to attract attention. Fanferglowing. Another argument often cited by supporters of the poison theory involves Michael Jackson's physical condition during rehearsals. Videos from This Is It show moments where Jackson appears energetic and engaged. Many fans point to these clips as evidence that he was healthy enough to perform. Others interpret the footage differently. They argue that short clips cannot reveal what was happening behind the scenes. Former associates gave varying accounts. Some described him as focused and determined. Others described periods of exhaustion and weakness. This contradiction has fueled years of speculation. Was Michael Jackson physically prepared for 50 concerts? Or was he pushing himself beyond safe limits? The answer depends largely on which accounts one chooses to believe. What remains undisputed is that the demands were enormous. Hours of rehearsals, complex choreography, live vocals, travel plans, production meetings, physical conditioning. For any performer, this would be challenging. For someone reportedly battling chronic insomnia, it could become significantly more difficult. Supporters of the poison theory argue that the pressure itself acted like a form of poison. Not a chemical poison, but a gradual drain on the body's ability to recover. To understand the theory fully, many people look even further back. Long before 2009, long before This Is It, long before the final rehearsals, Michael Jackson had lived a life unlike almost anyone else on Earth. Global fame arrived early. The pressure never disappeared. Media scrutiny followed him for decades. Every decision became headline news. Every mistake became international discussion. And every controversy intensified public attention. Few people experience that level of constant observation. Even fewer endure it for decades. Psychologists have often discussed the impact that chronic stress can have on physical health. Elevated stress hormones, sleep disruption, weakened immune responses, cardiovascular strain, mental exhaustion. Over long periods, these effects can accumulate. Some supporters of the poison theory believe Michael Jackson's body had been absorbing these pressures for years. Not days, not months, years. And by 2009, they argue, the cumulative effects may have become impossible to ignore. Another major component of the theory involves medication use. Throughout his life, Michael Jackson reportedly received various prescriptions from different physicians. The exact details remain disputed and complex. However, investigations after his death revealed the presence of multiple substances in his system. This has led some researchers to ask whether the issue was larger than propofol alone. Could years of medication use have contributed to long-term physical vulnerability? Could multiple treatments from multiple doctors have created unintended consequences? Could dependency on pharmaceutical solutions have gradually increased over time? These questions remain controversial. Many experts caution against speculation. Others argue that such questions deserve examination. What makes the debate particularly difficult is the lack of complete certainty. The further investigators move away from the final day of Jackson's life, the harder it becomes to separate evidence from assumption. And yet, it is precisely this uncertainty that keeps the theory alive. Over time, some versions of the poison theory became even more dramatic. Certain conspiracy theorists claimed powerful individuals intentionally wanted Michael Jackson dead. Others suggested financial motives. Some pointed to music catalog ownership. Others focused on business disputes. Still others claimed Jackson had become a threat to influential figures. These theories gained attention online, but they often lacked strong evidence. In many cases, claims spread faster than facts. Investigators never produced credible proof supporting these more extreme allegations. As a result, many researchers separate the poison theory into two categories. The first is a medical theory, the idea that years of physical decline, medication use, and sleep deprivation gradually weakened Jackson. The second is a conspiracy theory, the claim that someone deliberately orchestrated his decline. The first remains debated. The second remains largely unsupported by evidence. Understanding this distinction is important because the two ideas are often mistakenly treated as the same thing. More than 15 years after Michael Jackson's death, one question remains. Why are people still discussing this? Part of the answer lies in Michael Jackson himself. He was not simply a celebrity. He was a cultural phenomenon. His influence reached every corner of the globe. When someone of that magnitude dies unexpectedly, people naturally search for explanations. Simple answers often feel insufficient. Another reason is the unusual nature of the official story. The idea that one of the most famous entertainers in history died while receiving a surgical anesthetic inside his own bedroom sounds almost unbelievable. For many people, the circumstances seem too strange to ignore. And when questions remain unanswered, theories tend to emerge. Some survive because they contain evidence. Others survive because they contain mystery. The poison theory exists somewhere between those two worlds. So, was Michael Jackson poisoned? The answer depends entirely on what someone means by the word poison. If the claim is that a secret toxin was intentionally administered as part of a murder plot, there is little credible evidence supporting that idea. If the claim is that years of insomnia, medication dependency, stress, physical exhaustion, and medical mismanagement gradually weakened him, then the conversation becomes far more complicated, because many of those factors were undeniably present during his final years. What remains clear is that Michael Jackson's death was not just the story of one tragic day. It was the story of a complicated life, a life lived under extraordinary pressure, a life shaped by fame, expectations, success, controversy, and relentless public attention. And perhaps that is why the mystery continues. Not because every question lacks an answer, but because some answers still feel incomplete. More than a decade later, the world continues to examine the final chapter of Michael Jackson's story, searching for the moment when everything went wrong. And whether the poison theory ultimately proves true, false, or somewhere in between, it serves as a reminder that sometimes the most important mysteries are not about how someone died. They are about everything that happened before. What do you think? Was Michael Jackson's death simply the result of one catastrophic medical mistake? Or do you believe years of pressure, medications, and declining health played a much larger role than most people realize? Let us know your thoughts below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more mystery and documentary-style stories.